In the quiet village of Umwagu, nestled between lush green hills and winding rivers, there lived a young man named Chijiok. He was known for his wisdom, strength, and kindness, but above all, for his love of beauty. He admired fine things, be it the golden glow of the sun on the river's surface or the delicate petals of a hibiscus flower. Yet, despite his many admirers, he had never found a woman who truly captivated his heart. One evening, as Chijiok walked home from the farm, he took a path that led him past the forbidden forest of Ahomiri. The villagers warned that spirits and creatures not of this world dwelled there, but curiosity got the better of him. As he approached a small clearing, he saw her. A woman unlike any he had ever seen stood by the riverbank, washing her feet in the crystal-clear water. Her skin glowed like polished bronze, and her long black hair cascaded down her back like a flowing river. Her eyes, deep, hypnotic, and golden, held him in a trance. She was draped in a wrapper of the purest white, and every movement she made was as graceful as a swaying palm tree. Chijiok felt his heart stop. "Who are you?" he asked, stepping closer. The woman looked up, a small smile playing on her lips. "My name is Neka," she said, her voice as soft as the evening breeze. Chijiok had never heard of her before. Surely, a beauty like hers could not have gone unnoticed in the village. But he did not question it. His heart was already ensnared. From that day on, he sought her out at the river, speaking with her, laughing with her, and falling deeply in love. Neka, however, refused to enter the village. "This place is my home," she told him, gesturing to the forest and river. "If you love me, you will come to me here." Blinded by love, Chijiok did not think it strange. He decided that if she would not come to him, he would go to her. Against the warnings of elders and friends, he took his bride from the riverbank and built a home for her at the edge of the forbidden forest. They were soon married, and for a while, he was the happiest man alive. But strange things began to happen. At night, Neka would disappear, returning only at dawn. She never ate in front of him, and she refused to step into the sunlight for too long. Sometimes, he would wake in the middle of the night to find her whispering in a language he could not understand. One night, curiosity overwhelmed him. Pretending to be asleep, he watched as Neka slipped out of bed and walked into the moonlight. Then, before his very eyes, her beautiful form shimmered and melted away, revealing a massive, gleaming black snake. Chijiok's blood ran cold. His beloved wife was not human. He wanted to scream, to run, to pray, but fear held him captive. He watched as the serpent slithered toward the river, disappearing into the depths of Ahomiri. At dawn, she returned, once again in her human form. She lay beside him, pressing her warm skin against his, unaware that he now knew her secret. Chijiok was trapped. The woman he loved was not a woman at all. But how could he leave? If he tried to run, would she not hunt him down? And even worse, did he still love her despite knowing the truth? The weight of his discovery sat heavy on his heart, and as Neka lay peacefully beside him, he wondered, had she ever truly loved him, or had he simply fallen into the trap of a spirit far beyond his understanding? Chijiok lay awake till the first light of dawn, his heart pounding in his chest. He turned to look at Neka, who was still fast asleep beside him. Her face was peaceful, her breathing steady, so human, so real. If he hadn't seen the truth with his own eyes, he never would have believed it. But now he knew. His wife was a snake. A deep fear settled in his bones, but with it came confusion. Neka had been nothing but kind, loving, and gentle with him. She had brought him happiness he had never known before. Was she truly a monster? Or had he simply married a being beyond human understanding? Still, he could not live with such a secret. He needed help. That morning, he made an excuse to leave the house and went straight to the home of the village Dibia, the spiritual healer and seer, an old man named Ozoemena. Ozoemena listened patiently as Chijiok told his tale, his face growing graver with each word. When Chijiok finished, the old man sighed deeply. "I warned you," Ozoemena said. "We all warned you about the forbidden forest. But your heart was stronger than your wisdom." Chijiok hung his head. "What do I do, Dibia? She has not harmed me, but I cannot live with this secret." The old man studied him for a long moment before speaking. "You must leave her, Chijiok. She is not of our world. She may love you, but she will never be truly yours. Spirits and men do not belong together. If you stay, there will be consequences. Chijioke swallowed hard. How do I leave? If she finds out I know the truth, she might. She will, Ozoemina said grimly. And if she feels betrayed, she may not let you go. Fear gripped Chijioke's heart. He had to act carefully. That night, he returned home and pretended as if nothing had changed. He smiled at Neka, kissed her, and held her close. But deep inside, he was preparing his escape. For days, he secretly gathered supplies, food, water, and a small bag of his belongings. Then, on the night of the next full moon, he waited until Neka slipped away to the river. This was his chance. With nothing but the clothes on his back and his small bundle, he fled into the forest, running as fast as his legs could carry him. He did not stop until he was far beyond the borders of Mwagu, beyond the reach of Ahomiri. But Neka was. When she returned and found him gone, her wail of sorrow and rage echoed through the land, chilling the bones of all who heard it. Her golden eyes burned with fury as she transformed into her true form and followed his scent. Chijioke thought he had escaped. But he had underestimated the wrath of a spirit scorned. Chijioke ran through the night, his heart pounding in his chest. The thick forest was alive with the sounds of crickets and distant hoots of owls, but all he could hear was the blood rushing in his ears. His feet were bruised, his body exhausted, but he did not stop. He knew she would come for him. As the first light of dawn touched the treetops, he reached another village, Amakwi. It was far from Mwagu, a place he had only heard about in passing. Panting heavily, he stumbled toward the village square, where a few early risers were setting up their market stalls. An old woman selling groundnuts noticed his distress. "Nwam, what troubles you?" she asked. Chijioke hesitated. He could not tell her the full truth. Who would believe him? "I am a traveler," he said. "I seek refuge." The woman studied him with kind eyes and gestured toward a nearby hut. "Go to the home of Izuto, the village chief. He is a good man." Chijioke nodded in gratitude and hurried toward the chief's compound. Izuto, a tall, imposing man with streaks of white in his beard, listened as Chijioke begged for a place to stay. "You may rest here," the chief said. "But tell me, young man, what are you running from?" Chijioke hesitated. "A woman," he admitted. "A woman I should not have married." The chief chuckled. "Many men say that, but few run for their lives because of it." If only he knew. That night, Chijioke finally slept, believing he was safe. But far away, at the edge of Ahomiri, Neka had already found his trail. The wrath of Neka. By the time night fell on Amakwi, the villagers noticed something strange. The air had grown thick, heavy with an unnatural silence. Even the crickets had stopped singing. The wind carried whispers, soft, slithering, eerie. Then came the hiss. A massive shadow slithered through the trees, its golden eyes glowing like fire in the darkness. Neka had arrived. Chijioke woke with a start, his chest tightening with an overwhelming sense of dread. He heard the villagers shouting outside. Something is in the village. A spirit. A monster. He knew. He grabbed his small bundle and rushed to the door, but before he could step outside, the thatched roof above him collapsed. A heavy force slammed into the ground before him. And there she was. Neka stood before him, no longer hiding. Her human form shimmered in the dim moonlight, but her golden eyes were filled with betrayal and fury. "You ran from me, Chijioke," she whispered. Her voice was soft, but it carried the weight of 1,000 storms. "You broke my heart." Chijioke trembled. "Neka, please. Was I not good to you?" she asked, stepping closer. "Did I not love you?" "You did," he admitted. "But you are not what I thought you were." Pain flickered in her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by cold rage. "And for that, you fled. You left me like a thief in the night." She raised her hand, and suddenly, the air around them crackled. The villagers who had gathered outside screamed as the ground trembled. Shadows moved unnaturally, and the wind howled like a wounded beast. "Ekwensu O," someone shouted. "She is a demon." Izuto, the chief, stepped forward, holding a staff of power. "Leave this village, spirit," he commanded. "This is not your home." Neka turned to him slowly, her expression unreadable. "He is mine," she said, her voice like a whispering wind. "And I have come to take him back." Chijioke's heart pounded. He had a choice: stand and fight, or surrender to his fate. But before he could decide, the ground beneath them cracked open, and the darkness of Ahomiri reached out to claim him. The ground beneath Chijioke trembled violently, splitting open like the jaws of a great beast. From the chasm, a cold wind howled, carrying whispers from the spirit world. The villagers screamed, scrambling away in terror as Neka stood unmoved, her golden eyes glowing with an unearthly light. Chijioke stumbled backward, his breath coming in short gasps. "Neka, please. I beg you." Her face softened, if only for a moment. "I loved you, Chijioke," she said. "I gave you everything. Yet, you betrayed me." Tears filled his eyes. "I was afraid. You are not human, I did not know what to do." "Then you should have stayed," she whispered. "You should have trusted me." Izuto, the village chief, slammed his staff into the ground. The earth glowed with a faint blue light, forming a protective barrier between Neka and Chijioke. "Spirit of Ahomiri, you have no power here. Leave this land, or face the wrath of our gods." Neka's expression darkened. "You think your gods can stop me?" With a wave of her hand, the blue barrier flickered and shattered like glass. Izuto staggered back, his strength no match for hers. The villagers cried out in horror as Neka's form twisted, her body elongating, her skin shifting into dark, gleaming scales. Before them stood a monstrous serpent, its coils massive enough to crush entire huts. Chijioke fell to his knees. His heart told him to run, but something deeper held him in place. He had once loved this being, did a part of high. "Neka," he whispered. "Please, don't do this." The serpent paused, its golden eyes locking onto his. In that moment, he saw something beneath the fury, pain. But then, the whispers from the chasm grew louder, calling her back. The spirits of Ahomiri were summoning their lost daughter. She hissed, her massive body writhing, torn between two worlds. Chijioke saw his chance. He stepped forward, placing a hand on her scales. "Let me go, Neka. Let us go." For the first time, she hesitated. But the spirits would not wait. A shadowy force wrapped around her, pulling her toward the gaping hole. She screamed, not in anger, but in fear. "Chijioke," she cried, reaching for him. Against all reason, he grabbed her hand. But she was slipping away, her form shifting, dissolving into mist and shadow. Then, with one final, sorrowful gaze, she was gone. The ground sealed itself, the wind ceased, and the village fell into silence. Chijioke collapsed. For days, he remained weak, haunted by dreams of golden eyes and whispered words. He never saw Neka again. But sometimes, when he walked by the river at dusk, he swore he could hear her voice in the wind, calling his name. And he wondered, had he escaped her? Or was she merely waiting? We have gotten to the end of this story. Like and subscribe to watch next video of the return of Neka.